She said yes to the beta. But the night didn't end with a vow. It began with a claim. When the king stepped out of the shadows, even the moon held its breath. They built the circle in the riverbed because water remembers and tonight needed memory. Lanterns swung from willow branches, sending thin ovals of light over stone, skin, and wolf eyes that watched without blinking. Drums kept a slow, practical rhythm. Nothing grand, just the heartbeat of a duty no one wanted to question out loud. She stood at the edge of the chalk ring with a sprig of salt bush pressed into her palm. Not a bouquet, not a symbol of romance. Salt bush for endurance. That was the point. She had chosen safety, and safety had a name. "Give me your hand," said the beta, voice steady enough for both of them. His name was Kale. He never wasted words. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. When the others called him loyal like it was bland, she learned to hear what it meant. He stayed. In a pack that measured worth by bloodline, staying was a kind of rebellion. She offered her hand and caught the flicker in his gaze, the quick scan he always did. Wrist for bruises, shoulders for tension, jaw for how hard she was clenching. He registered everything, spoke nothing. He placed his palm over hers and the drum line shifted into the first cadence of a binding. Left, left, pause, right, echo. The elders' mouths moved in practiced sync. Smoke rose from the fire pit and carried the scent of sage, bone ash, and river clay into the chill. "Before moon and pack," intoned the seer, "before law and legend." She could feel the weight of 50 eyes resting on her like wet cloth. The mark under her collarbone burned faintly, always did during ceremony. She'd learned to ignore it the way people learn to ignore scars. It hurts, then it dulls, then it becomes navigation. She focused on Kale's hand, warm, calloused, slightly trembling despite his control. "Last chance," he murmured, almost smiling. "You can still run." "And be hunted at dawn," she replied. "Your sense of humor needs work. I'll workshop it after this." She almost laughed. Almost. He was the only one who could pull a smile out of her when her stomach was scraping the floor. He wasn't love. He was air when the room forgot to have windows. The seer lifted a bowl of river water. "Name your choice." "I choose," she began. The ground answered first. It was a low shudder, like the riverbed clearing its throat. The chalk ring cracked through the center. The drums stopped because hands forgot how to hold sticks. Some wolves dropped to their knees before they even knew why. Others did it a heartbeat later when the wind slashed through the willows and turned the lantern flames thin and blue. Kale squeezed her fingers. "Stay behind me." She tried to breathe around the pressure building under her collarbone. It wasn't panic, it was heat, a slow flare like iron in a forge. The seer's eyes cut to her, then to the path beyond the trees. The path most packs pretended wasn't there unless it needed to be. Boots sounded before she saw him, measured, unhurried, the kind of footfall that says, "I've never needed to run from anything." The elders bowed at the same time, a reflex shot down the spine by years of rule. The rest followed, even those who hated him with prayerful devotion bent because the body knows danger better than pride does. The king stepped into the ring of light like the night had been keeping a place warm for him. No herald, no cloak dragging symbols through the dust. Dark leathers, hands bare, throat unadorned. He scanned faces, dismissed them, scanned again, halting only when his gaze found hers. The heat under her skin caught and rose. Not desire. Recognition, like the second before a storm breaks when every hair on your arm stands to count lightning. Kale shifted to block the line of sight. "Your Majesty," he said evenly, "this is a private rite." "Then it should have stayed private," the king replied, voice flat but edged. "Instead, I smelled your mistake from the ridge." The elders flinched like he'd slapped them. She didn't. She was watching his eyes because eyes tell the truth first. They weren't hungry. They weren't curious. They were measuring distance to a door only he could see. "Continue," the seer said, forcing ceremony back onto rails. "We bind by our law, not by—" "Our law," the king cut in, "began when the moon chose our line. Do you want to test which law bleeds less?" He walked past the elders without touching them and stopped a breath away from Kale. Up close, the power wasn't in his size. It was in the stillness. Most alphas broadcast heat, violence, the promise of a fight. He gave nothing away. It made your instincts scramble for purchase. "Move," the king said. "No," Kale answered. 2 letters, solid as a gate. For a second she thought the king would shatter him. He didn't. He looked at their hands, still linked, and then at her face the way a survivor checks a wound to see if it's new or the same one that never healed. "What is your name?" he asked her. Names are binding. Everyone knew that. She gave it anyway. "Leora." He said it once, testing the balance. "Leora." The heat under her skin flared to pain. Not random. Patterned. It beat in time with the lantern sway, the drum rhythm that had gone to ground in the silence. The seer was staring openly now, breath short. She knew that look. Prophecy recognized too late to prevent damage. The king tilted his head. "Take your hand back, Kale." Kale didn't move. His jaw flexed, a decision hardening. She chose. The king's mouth didn't so much as twitch. He raised his palm and reached, not for Kale, but for the air between their joined hands. The temperature dropped a fraction. The river hiccuped and then went very still, as if listening. "Her scent is wrong," he said, but wrong didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like the answer to a question that had been keeping him awake for years. "Do you feel it?" The line under the line. Kale's nostrils flared. He didn't answer. "Say your choice," the king told her, eyes on hers alone. "Say it, and I will know if the moon lies tonight." She should have been afraid. Instead, she felt oddly clear, as if the night finally matched the weather inside her body. She stepped around Kale, keeping their hands linked until the last second because she wanted him to feel the squeeze, to know she wasn't abandoning him so much as stepping into something they could no longer outmaneuver. "I chose safety," she said. "I chose him." The king exhaled once, slow. "Then hear this." He closed the distance by the smallest fraction, enough that the heat rolled off him like a furnace door opening. The mark under her collarbone stung, then split, just a hairline tear, like a scab remembering it wasn't finished. A scent cut through the smoke and ash. Not hers, not his. Something layered. Frost on old marble, iron after rain. The seer swayed. "Do not speak the name," she warned, voice thin. "If you say her name in the ring, the bond was never yours to make." The king finished, eyes still locked on Leora. "I buried a queen with that mark. I woke to the same mark tonight." The circle buckled. Not physically. In the rules everyone pretended weren't rules. The elders' mouths opened. No sound came. Kale made the smallest motion, his fingers inching toward her again, and that was what snapped the king's control. Not jealousy. Instinct. "Enough." He lifted his hand. The drumsticks fell from a drummer's grip without being touched. The chalk ring flared to a smear and vanished. Her and Kale's palms, still warm from the ritual, cooled as if dropped in snow. The half-made bond, intention braided with rhythm, not yet blood, pulled taut, then recoiled like cut rope. It didn't break with a dramatic crack. It unmade itself quietly, the way a promise dissolves when spoken in the wrong light. Kale sucked in a breath, like a knife had slid between his ribs. He didn't stagger. He just stood there, eyes on her, apology and apology's refusal fighting on his face. She had the insane thought that she should say she was sorry for picking the safest path and finding a trap instead. The king dropped his hand. The river exhaled. "By royal right," he said, voice as impersonal as a verdict. "She belongs to the crown." "Say her name again," Kale replied. and the threat in it wasn't about violence. It was about history. The king finally looked at him, not as a man blocking a view, as a soldier he'd once saved, as a wolf who knew exactly how far loyalty could be bent before it snapped. "You'll guard her," he told Kale, as if assigning a post before dawn watch. "You'll keep her breathing. You'll keep your hands off her." Kale said nothing. Agreement is a kind of betrayal if you say it out loud. The seer tried to salvage ceremony, grabbing handfuls of ash, muttering lines meant to glue a night back together. The words fell apart. This was no longer their ritual. It was someone else's story, and it had just found its spine. Leora touched her collarbone. The mark was hot enough to burn her fingers. She stood very still. She would not give them panic. She would not give them tears. She watched the king instead, cataloging every detail the way she'd learned to catalog exits in a room with too many rules. The notch in his left ear where an old blade had skimmed cartilage, the faint scar at his throat that never fully faded, the way his pupils edged wider when the lantern swung toward her face. He didn't step closer. He didn't have to. Command doesn't always need motion. It just needs everyone else to understand what happens if they don't listen. "Prepare the carriage," he said to no one and everyone. "We leave before the second watch." An elder found his courage, or his foolishness. "Your Majesty, with respect, this breaks precedence. The council can wake up like the rest of you," the king replied. He turned, then paused. "Seer," the old woman stiffened. "Say it," he ordered. She lifted her chin. "The scent carries the queen's mark. The river remembers her. The moon will test you." "Good," he said, which was not the answer anyone expected. He faced Leora again. For a fraction of a breath, something like sorrow crossed his features and vanished. "You chose safety, Leora. I'm sorry the moon didn't." He left the circle with the same unhurried steps he used to enter it. Wolves rose from their knees like men waking from a chokehold. Kale unclenched his fists and looked at her hand, as if it were something valuable he'd just been ordered to return. "Say the word," he murmured, low enough for only her to hear. "I'll take you before his riders can form up. We can make the old quarry by sunrise. After that?" "There is no after that," she said, not cruelly, just honest. She lifted his hand and pressed it to the center of her chest, to the heat that wouldn't let up. "It's already begun." Lanterns creaked. The willows whispered a language of leaves that had nothing to do with fate. Drums lay silent on the ground like stunned birds. Somewhere past the trees, the royal horses stamped, smelling a story they'd be asked to carry. By the time the moon broke free of the last cloud, the circle was gone, the chalk swept up by feet that didn't want to leave traces. The river resumed its soft, practical work, and the girl who had said yes to safety stood at the edge of a road that would not allow it. When the carriage door opened, she climbed in without looking back, not because she didn't care, because if she did, she might run, and running was for people who still believed the night would let them hide. Morning in the royal stronghold did not arrive with light. It arrived with noise, iron bolts unlatching, hooves echoing against stone, the measured cadence of a kingdom running on command. Leora woke in a bed too soft to trust, beneath a ceiling painted with constellations she didn't recognize. Her wrists were unbound, but freedom was a word this place didn't use. A serving girl entered, tray trembling, eyes fixed on the floor. "Breakfast, my lady," she whispered, though no one had called Leora that before. Leora sat up, the thin silk sheets sliding against skin marked with faint silver lines where the moon's power had burned her last night. "Where is the king?" she asked. The girl flinched, nearly dropping the tray. "He does not take mourning with anyone." Then softer, "You should not ask." When the door shut, silence pressed in again. The walls breathed heat from the fires below. The whole castle seemed alive in a way that made her think of a beast half asleep and dreaming of teeth. From the balcony she could see the northern courtyard, soldiers drilling in precise, wordless movements. Among them was Kale. His armor had changed, Royal insignia gleamed across the chest. Her chest tightened. The king had not killed him. He had done worse. By midday, 2 guards escorted her through corridors that smelled of wax and steel to the great hall. It wasn't a throne room. It was an arena of listening. Ministers lined the walls, each one pretending not to look directly at her. At the far end, the king stood with his back turned, studying an enormous map burned into the table. He didn't look up when he spoke. "You slept. You make it sound like treason. It might be." He turned, and the weight of his attention landed like a hand on her throat. "The last time a woman with your mark slept under my roof, she didn't wake. I'm not her." "No," he said quietly. "But the moon disagrees." He crossed the floor until the distance between them was a single breath. His scent, iron, smoke, and the edge of something wild, wrapped around her like a warning. "Tell me, Leora, when did the mark appear?" "I was born with it." "Liar." He reached out, not to touch, but to hover a hand over the glowing skin at her collarbone. The mark pulsed faintly, silver threading like veins under translucent flesh. His pupils widened, not with desire, but recognition. "It's waking." She forced herself not to step back. "What is it?" "Punishment," he said. "Or inheritance. Depends on whether you believe the seers." As if summoned, the palace seer shuffled from behind a column, bones clicking under layers of shawl. "Your Majesty," she rasped. "The scent carries the echo, the Queen's echo." A murmur spread through the ministers. The king silenced them with a glance. "Speak plainly." "The moon remembers," the seer said. "It does not forgive repetition." She pointed a crooked finger at Leora. "The blood that burned the queen returns to finish its vow." Leora met the king's gaze. "So I'm your curse." He studied her as if trying to find an angle where that wasn't true. "You are my confirmation," he said finally, "that what I buried refuses to stay dead." A guard entered, bowed, and announced, "Commander Kale, awaiting orders." The king's jaw tightened. "Send him in." Kale's boots echoed across the marble. He looked the same, yet everything about him was rearranged, posture sharpened by duty, eyes dulled by the weight of it. He bowed. "My king." Leora took half a step forward before she remembered what that title cost. "Your new assignment," the king said, "is to guard her. You will accompany her at all times. You will ensure she breathes, eats, obeys. You will also remember she belongs to me." Kale didn't flinch, but his fingers twitched at his side. "Understood." The king's eyes slid back to her. "You will stay in the east wing. Do not enter the western corridors after sunset." "Why?" His expression didn't change. "Because that's where the queen used to scream." A silence deep enough to hear heartbeats settled over the hall. Leora wanted to ask what he meant, but the words died somewhere between her teeth and her pride. He dismissed the room with a gesture. Only Kale and the seer remained. When the doors shut, the king spoke softly to the seer. "If the moon marked her, it means it chose again." The old woman nodded. "Or it never stopped choosing." That night, Leora's chamber filled with moonlight filtered through stained glass. She couldn't sleep. The castle's heartbeat was constant. Doors sighing, armor clinking, whispers slipping through cracks. She moved to the window. The forest beyond the walls looked like a sea frozen mid-storm. Behind her a shadow stirred. "You shouldn't stand so close to the glass," Kale said. "Archers practice at night." She didn't turn. "You shouldn't be here." "I was ordered to be." "By him." He stepped closer. "By the same man who once ordered me to protect you." She turned then. His eyes were tired, older than the night allowed. "Why are you doing this?" "Because if I don't, someone worse will." "Do you hate him?" Kale shook his head slowly. "You can't hate the man who owns the air you breathe. You just learn how to breathe quieter." The mark at her collarbone pulsed again, faintly illuminating the room. Cale saw it and froze. "It's spreading," he whispered. Leora looked down. The glow now traced along her veins a slow, deliberate path toward her heart. "What does it mean?" Before he could answer, a voice echoed from the corridor, cold, precise. "It means she's waking up." The king stood in the doorway, half shadow, half moonlight, watching them both. Cale dropped to one knee. Leora didn't move. The king's gaze lingered on her mark, then on Cale's bowed head. "Guard her from everyone," he said, "including yourself." He turned to leave, but paused at the threshold. "The queen's blood burned this palace once. I'd rather not rebuild it again." The door closed behind him, sealing the echo of his warning into the stone. Leora touched her collarbone. The light beneath her skin throbbed in time with the castle's heartbeat. Somewhere deep within the walls, she heard a sound like a woman laughing or weeping. It was hard to tell the difference. And for the first time, she wondered if the curse the king feared wasn't returning to haunt him, but to finish what it started. The palace slept like something pretending to be dead. Leora lay in the middle of her too-wide bed, listening to stone breathe. Every wall here had lungs. You could hear the slow exhale through the vents, the soft groan of old mortar shifting under weight it had carried for centuries. When she closed her eyes, the sound folded into whispering that didn't belong to anyone alive. She dreamt of water, not the gentle current of the river back home, but black water pooling under the palace floors. Something moved beneath it, slow, deliberate, the way memory moves when you try to forget it. A hand reached up, pale and ringed in gold, brushing the underside of the surface. She woke with the taste of iron on her tongue. The candles had burned down to half their size. On the far wall, the portrait of the late queen stared back. Someone had draped a veil across it earlier, out of respect or fear, yet the fabric now hung shredded. The queen's painted eyes seemed wet, glossed over with something darker than varnish. Leora blinked. The wetness trickled down the canvas. Blood. The scent hit first, metal and salt. She stumbled from the bed, heartbeat slamming against her ribs. When she reached out, the painting was cold. The blood didn't smear. It vanished the second her fingers touched it. Only the faint hum under her skin remained, a pulse echoing from the mark at her collarbone. "Not real," she whispered. "Just the air, just the—" The door creaked open by itself. The corridor beyond was empty. She saw moonlight striping the floor and, at the far end, a door she had never seen before. The eastern wing didn't have this many rooms. The king had said never to cross west, but this wasn't west. It was something else, tucked between both halves of the castle like a scar. She stepped forward barefoot. Each tile she crossed hummed faintly, as if remembering footsteps. The air grew colder, not the normal mountain chill, but the kind that smells of metal kept too long underground. The door opened before she touched it. Inside waited a small chamber lined with mirrors. They weren't clean. Every reflection shimmered a second behind her movements, as though the glass needed time to decide what truth to show. At the center sat a chair carved from dark oak and wrapped in silver bands. Shackles hung from its arms. When she leaned closer, she saw faint claw marks scoring the wood. The queen had sat here. A voice behind her nearly stopped her heart. "You shouldn't be here." Cale. He moved from the shadows, armor unfastened, eyes burning low like coals under ash. "This room is sealed for a reason." I followed the door. "Doors don't open in this palace unless they're told to." She looked back at the chair. She was restrained. She was dangerous. "So am I," Leora said quietly. He didn't argue. He reached out to close the door, but when his hand brushed hers, both of them froze. The mark under her skin flared, sending a line of silver light down her arm. It burned bright enough to cast their faces in glow. "Leora." The light surged. A sound filled the room, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat layered over another. The mirrors rippled. Her reflection multiplied, one standing still, one smiling, one screaming. The screaming version was the queen's face wearing her mark. Cale pulled her back just as the mirror cracked from center to edge. They stumbled into the corridor. The door slammed shut with a gust that blew out every candle in sight. Footsteps echoed from deeper within the hall. The king. He appeared with no escort, bare-armed, eyes reflecting silver. "I warned you about the western wing," he said. "It wasn't the west," she answered, breath sharp. "The door found me." His gaze slid to Cale. "You let her wander?" "She didn't wander," Cale snapped. "The palace did." The king's expression hardened. Enough. He stepped closer to Leora, scanning the faint glow fading from her veins. "You touched the chair." "It called me," she said before she could stop herself. The king flinched, barely, but enough for Cale to notice. "What is that room?" she demanded. "What did you do to her?" The king didn't answer immediately. His voice, when it came, was quiet and sharp. "The queen built it herself. She thought she could separate the wolf from the woman. She failed. The mirrors showed her everything she'd buried. In the end, she clawed through her own reflection trying to escape. And now I see her too," Leora said. "That's impossible," he muttered, more to himself than to her. The mirrors were sealed after her death. Cale stepped between them. "It's not impossible if the same power's waking again." The king's jaw clenched. "You think she's the same person reborn?" "I think the moon doesn't waste resources," Cale said. The king turned his stare on Leora. "You're not her." "No," she agreed. "But maybe she's still inside your palace waiting for someone who can finish what she started." He reached out, stopping inches from her shoulder. The heat radiating off his hand met the cold seeping from her mark. For a moment it looked as if frost and fire tried to occupy the same space. Then he pulled away. "You will not go near that room again. If I'm what you say I am, you can't stop me." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "If you're what I think you are, you should pray that I can." He turned on his heel and left. The echo of his boots faded into the restless heartbeat of the walls. Cale looked after him, then back at her. "You have to leave." "You're ordering me now?" "I'm warning you. He's unraveling. That mark, whatever it means, it's tearing the whole hierarchy apart. The council's whispering about the curse returning. They'll want proof before they move. Don't give them time to find it." "Run where, Cale?" "The moon knows my name. The king smells it. Even the mirrors remember it." He didn't answer. Instead, he pressed something into her hand, a small iron pendant shaped like a crescent, cold even through her skin. "If you hear her voice again, hold this. It grounds you. It used to belong to the queen." She closed her fist around it. "How did you get it?" "I was her guard before I was yours," he said. "And I failed her once." A sound drifted through the corridor then, a soft hum, unmistakably feminine. It came from the sealed room they had just fled. The melody rose and fell, threading through stone like smoke. Cale backed away slowly. "She's awake again." Leora felt the mark at her collarbone pulse in rhythm with the song. Her vision flickered. One heartbeat she was in the corridor, the next standing in moonlight beside the queen's mirror, staring into her own face split by a silver smile. When she blinked, she was back, Cale gripping her shoulders. "You saw it too," he whispered. "I think," she said, voice shaking, "the palace is trying to remember who killed her." Far down the hall, the king's voice thundered orders to seal the wing. Guards rushed to obey, but Leora knew it wouldn't matter. The ghosts here didn't need doors. They only needed her pulse to keep time. And as the locks clanged into place, she understood for the first time what she truly was. Not a replacement, not a prize. A weapon forged by something older than any crown. And the palace full of ghosts was only her forge. The smell of blood still lingered long after the bodies were cleared. It clung to the tapestries, soaked into the cracks between stones, followed Leora through every corridor like a reminder. She could hear the whispers spreading already, how the king's wolf had gone feral, how the girl with the cursed mark had survived what no unmated wolf should. By morning, no one spoke her name above a whisper. They didn't need to. She was now the palace's quiet question. What kind of creature could make the Alpha King afraid? Kale found her in the training courtyard, sitting on the edge of the well where the moon's reflection rippled in the water. He waited until the guards on the walls looked elsewhere before approaching. "You shouldn't be out here," he said. Leora didn't look up. "I'm tired of walls pretending to keep me safe. You think the open air is safer? I think danger's more honest out here." He gave a short, reluctant smile, the kind that used to mean something once. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "What did you do to the king last night?" "I saved him." "That's what they're calling it?" She turned to face him. "What are you calling it?" He studied her, the scar along his jaw catching moonlight. "Impossible," he said finally. "An unmated wolf shouldn't be able to channel the moon's energy, not without burning out." "I didn't burn." "No," he murmured. "That's what scares me." He reached into his cloak and drew out a scroll sealed with black wax and the royal crest. "I found this in the council archives, hidden behind a false shelf." "What is it?" He unrolled it, revealing an old sigil written in blood and silver ink, 2 moons intertwined by a single line of script. The writing shimmered faintly, as if alive. "It's the Queen's vow," he said. "The night she died, she wasn't trying to curse the throne. She was trying to bind it, to herself, to her line, to the moon's will. The ritual was unfinished when she was killed." Leora finished. Kale nodded. "You carry the same mark she carved into her own skin. That means the bond never broke. You're the other half." "Of what?" "The throne." He took a breath, voice tightening. The moon chose the royal bloodline to rule, but it also demanded balance, Alpha and Luna. When the queen died, the bond fractured. The king rules by force now, not right. That's why his wolf is slipping. She shook her head. "You're saying this curse isn't a punishment. It's a crown." "It's both," he said. "And it ends one of 2 ways. Either he kills you to sever the link, or he claims you to complete it." The words hit like a strike to the chest. She looked at the reflection in the well water, the faint silver glow coiling up her throat. "So I'm his salvation, or his death?" "Both again," Kale whispered. She laughed once, sharp, humorless. "And where do you stand in that choice?" He hesitated, then knelt in front of her. The motion was deliberate, dangerous. "I stand where I've always stood, with you." "Don't," she said softly. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "This one I'll keep," he said. He reached into his armor, drew a small dagger, and dragged it lightly across his palm. Blood welled, dark against pale skin. He pressed his hand over hers before she could pull away. "I swore loyalty to the crown. But the crown isn't the king. It's the blood that binds the moon. That's you." "Kale, I'll protect you," he said, "even if it means drawing steel against him." The wind picked up, scattering dust around them. Somewhere in the castle a bell rang twice, the signal for a royal summons. Kale stood quickly, wiping the blood on his sleeve. "He knows we've met. He always knows." "Then go," she said, "before he questions you." He paused, eyes catching hers. "Leora, if he tries to finish the bond, don't let him touch you. Promise me." She wanted to ask why, but the look in his eyes stopped her. The kind of fear that didn't belong to a soldier. The kind of fear born from memory. After he left, the courtyard felt heavier, as if the air itself had overheard too much. Leora turned back to the well. The moon's reflection shimmered, fractured by ripples. For a heartbeat, It wasn't her face looking back. It was the Queen's. And the Queen was smiling. That night, the king summoned her to the throne room. He was alone, standing in the middle of the floor with the map of the kingdom spread beneath his boots. He didn't look up as she entered. "You've been speaking with my beta. He's my guard. He's my spy," the king said. Or he was. He finally raised his gaze to meet hers. "Do you know what he found?" "Enough to make you nervous," she said. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, pain. It was hard to tell. "Nervous?" "No. Cursed men don't get nervous. They get careful." He crossed the distance between them. "Tell me, Leora, do you ever wonder why the moon marked you at all?" "I stopped wondering the night you took me." "Then you should start again." His hand lifted toward her mark, stopping just short of contact. The air between them pulsed. The Queen tried to bind the moon's power. It burned her alive from the inside out. "You carry the same thread, and yet you're still breathing. Why?" "Maybe the moon learned mercy." "No," he said softly. "It learned precision." She took a step back, but the pull between them tightened, invisible and electric. The mark on her chest glowed faintly, answering something in him. He closed his eyes, jaw locked. "If I touch you, this ends one way or another." "Then don't." His voice broke on the next words. "I don't know if I can." The doors slammed open. Guards entered, dragging someone between them. Kale. His armor was dented, blood on his lip, defiance in every line of his body. "My king," said one of the guards. "We caught him in the archives. He was burning documents from the Queen's chamber." Leora's stomach dropped. The king's gaze flicked to her, then back to Kale. "Is it true?" Kale didn't answer. "Answer me," the king roared. Kale spat blood on the floor. "It's true." The king's voice went quiet. "Why?" "Because the past doesn't belong to you anymore," Kale said. "It belongs to her." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the king raised his hand, claws sliding free. "Stop!" Leora cried. The king froze mid-motion. Not because of mercy, because the mark on her chest flared bright enough to blind them all. The light caught the iron sigils embedded in the walls, melted them into silver streaks. The guards fell to their knees, clutching their heads as the air thrummed. Kyle stared at her, disbelief and devotion warring on his face. The king lowered his hand slowly. His breathing was ragged, his voice rough. "You don't even know what you are, and already you command me." Leora met his gaze, trembling but unbroken. "Then maybe you should start listening." He turned away, the beast in him pacing just beneath the surface. "Take him to the cells," he ordered. "He'll live for now." As the guards dragged Kale away, he locked eyes with her and mouthed 2 words. "Find it." She didn't know what he meant then, but she would. Because the Queen's blood had written its truth somewhere deep in the castle walls, and the moon was already whispering where to look. And Leora, for the first time, didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. The moon rose swollen and red, dragging madness across the palace roofs like a tide. Every wolf in the kingdom could feel it. Bones tightening, breath shortening, instincts rising. In the throne room, the council chanted old oaths for control, but even their voices shook. The air itself vibrated like it was ready to split open. Leora sat in silence at the edge of her room, watching light crawl across the floorboards. The mark at her collarbone pulsed faster than her heartbeat. The iron cuffs on her wrists were new. The king had ordered them personally. They weren't meant for punishment. They were meant for containment. When the guards came for her, she didn't fight. The Queen's old chamber sat on the western edge of the palace, sealed since the night of her death. Dust layered everything like snow, yet the air felt alive, charged. The moonlight came through a single stained window, painting the walls crimson. The bed, draped in velvet long turned to decay, looked like a tomb dressed in memory. The king stood near the window, shirt open, skin streaked with tension. He didn't meet her eyes. "The moon's pull is worse tonight," he said, voice rough. "I can't trust myself." "Then why bring me here?" He turned finally, and the look in his eyes stopped her breath. It wasn't desire. It was terror disguised as control. "Because the curse ties itself to you. When it rises, it finds you. If I keep you close, maybe I can contain it." "You mean chain it?" He didn't deny it. He took a length of silver-threaded chain from the table and fastened it around her wrist, locking it to the bedpost. His hands were steady, but his scent betrayed him. Fear, sharp as iron. When he stepped back, she said quietly, "You could have just killed me." He laughed once, bitterly. If only it were that easy. Outside, the first howl tore through the night. Half grief, half hunger. The king winced, clutching his chest as his claws burst through his fingers. "Stay back," he growled, voice already thickening. "I told you, I can't." The transformation hit him mid-sentence. His body twisted, bones cracking under skin. His eyes blazed gold, but beneath the feral light was something else, a flicker of recognition, of fight. Leora reached for him on instinct. "Stop fighting it." "I said, stay back." He slammed a clawed hand against the wall, splitting stone. But when her chain clinked, he froze, gaze snapping toward her. The scent of her blood, sharp, electric, cut through the madness. Then everything changed. The mark on her skin flared white-hot, blinding in the dark. She gasped, pain searing through her veins as light spread under her flesh, branching into her arms like roots of fire. The king stumbled forward, caught between rage and reverence as the same light burned across his chest, matching her pattern exactly. When their eyes met, the world broke open. For a heartbeat, she wasn't in the chamber anymore. She stood in the same room years earlier, the queen's room. The same moon, the same red light. The queen knelt by the bed, whispering words to a mirror, her hands covered in blood. Behind her, a shadow moved, a man with a blade drawn low. Not a stranger, a guard. No, a counselor. The knife slid across the queen's throat as she turned, her eyes locking on something unseen. Leora felt the shock, the betrayal, the last flash of understanding. The curse hadn't killed her. It had been silenced before it could finish. The vision shattered. Leora collapsed back into her own body, gasping. The king knelt across from her, clutching his head. His claws had receded. His body shook with what he'd seen. "I saw it," he whispered. "Through you." "She was murdered," Leora said. Her voice trembled, but the truth steadied it. "By someone close to you." His face twisted. "Who?" "I couldn't see the face, only the mark on the hand, the ring with the black sun." The king's eyes widened. "Lord Halvern." "The head of your council," she said. "The one who said she cursed herself." He stood, fury and grief warring in his expression. "He made me bury her shame. He made me believe she went mad." Leora's chain rattled as she moved closer. "Then he'll try to do the same to me." The king looked at her, eyes flickering between beast and man. He stepped forward, fingers brushing the chain. "Not while I'm breathing." He yanked it from the wall with a strength that cracked the stone, freeing her wrist. "You're not my prisoner anymore." "Then what am I?" He hesitated. "The proof I should have looked for 5 years ago." She touched her glowing mark, still pulsing with shared energy. "You saw what I saw. That means the bond between us is growing." "I know," he said quietly. "And I don't know if that's salvation or the next curse." Outside, another howl rose, a chorus this time, echoing across the valley. The palace trembled under it. He turned toward the window, jaw set. "Halvern will know the curse is stirring again. He'll come for you." Leora moved beside him, her blood still glowing faintly beneath her skin. "Then let him come." He looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. You sound like her? The Queen? No, he said softly. Like the moon when it's about to rise. The words hung between them as the light from the window spilled over their faces, his shadow merging with hers until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. For the first time, the king didn't fear what she was becoming. He feared what they were becoming together. By the next moon, the palace no longer spoke with one voice. It muttered, hissed, divided itself into corners and loyalties. Every hall carried the same words, murmured like a prayer or a threat. The girl with the mark lives. Servants vanished for saying her name too loud. Guards were reassigned by dawn. The king's council met behind closed doors that smelled of fear and silver polish. And everywhere, Leora could feel the pull of the divide, the way eyes followed her, not with hatred anymore, but with calculation. She had become a rumor wrapped in skin. The king hadn't left his chambers in 2 days. When he did appear, his presence carried a strange kind of silence, the stillness before storms. The wolves in the courtyard stopped mid-training when he passed, unsure whether to salute or hide. Kale moved in shadows now. His armor bore no insignia. His orders came from no one. Those who knew him before whispered that he was no longer the king's beta, but something older, a protector of the moon's will, reborn in rebellion. It started small. Food rations appearing in the servants' quarters marked with a single crescent symbol, the same mark that pulsed beneath Leora's skin. Within days, half the lower ranks had pledged themselves to her without ceremony. She didn't ask for followers. She asked for truth. That was enough. One evening, the king found her in the abandoned library, poring over scrolls so old they turned to dust at her touch. You're recruiting, he said. Not a question. They're choosing, she replied. Against me. Against a lie. She looked up, eyes steady. You told them the curse killed the queen. You let her name rot so the throne could look clean. His jaw tightened. I buried what I had to so the kingdom wouldn't fracture. It fractured anyway. He stepped closer, voice low. You don't understand the cost of power. I'm learning, she said. You wear it like chains. I'd rather break it. For a heartbeat, he almost smiled, something sad and sharp. You sound just like her. Maybe she was right. She died for being right, or for being inconvenient. The words landed hard. He turned away before she could see the crack they made. Stay out of politics, Leora. The council's already preparing a trial for treason. Her voice didn't waver. Whose? He didn't answer. That night, Kale came to her chambers through a secret corridor behind the wall, the kind only the old guards remembered. His clothes were torn, his scent marked by smoke and iron. They've declared you a pretender, he said. The council named the king's word absolute. They're forcing him to end this. How? He looked at her, eyes hollow. By killing you publicly. Her breath hitched. He wouldn't. He has to, Kale said. But the bond is fighting him. He can't even say the words. As if on cue, the castle's bells began to toll, not for prayer, not for mourning, but for gathering. A decree. The king stood on the balcony before dawn, voice echoing through the courtyard. His council flanked him, faces carved from stone. Below, soldiers filled the square, some bearing his crest, others the faint silver crescent that marked quiet rebellion. Leora stood at the front of the crowd, flanked by Kale and a dozen of his allies. By law and by moon, the king began. He stopped. The next words didn't come. His throat constricted, muscles locking. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. He tried again, voice fracturing. Pain flashed across his face. He pressed a hand to his throat, gasping as if the air had turned to fire. The counselors looked at each other in alarm. Leora stepped forward. The mark on her chest glowed faintly, syncing with his heartbeat. Say it, she called. Say what you came to. He glared down at her, eyes wild. I can't. Because the bond forbids it, she said. Because killing me would kill you. The courtyard went still. The seer, standing at the edge of the dais, spoke for the first time in years. The moon has bound them. The throne cannot destroy its own vessel. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A soldier dropped to one knee, then another, then another. Cale raised his sword high, its blade catching the first light of dawn. You see it now, he shouted. The moon's choice doesn't wear a crown. It carries one beneath its skin. The king's voice broke through the noise, raw and unsteady. Cale, stand down. But the beta didn't. He stepped forward, sword lowered in salute to Leora. I told you once I'd protect you even from him. I'm keeping my word. Leora's pulse roared in her ears. Cale, stop. Don't make me your war. You already are, he said quietly. The soldiers split, half bowing to the king, half kneeling to her. The division solidified like cracking ice. The king's guards drew steel. Cale's followers answered in kind. The air smelled of blood before a drop had been spilled. Then the sky darkened. Clouds tore open around the moon, revealing its full face, not white, but silver-red, pulsing. The ground trembled. Every wolf dropped to their knees, even those who resisted. Power rippled through the courtyard like a storm's breath. Leora's mark burned brighter than ever, searing through her dress. The king fell to one knee, choking. She stepped forward until she stood at the foot of the dais. This isn't your throne anymore, she said. He looked up, eyes filled with pain and something else. Awe, maybe. Then whose is it? She extended her hand, the light spilling from her palm like moonfire. The moon's. And as the sky thundered with the roar of awakening wolves, the palace walls shook, not with destruction, but with recognition. The bond that had once chained them now pulsed with new purpose, neither curse nor command. Something ancient had remembered its name. The king's voice trembled. What have you done? Not me, she said. Us. He stared at her for a long moment, then lowered his head, not in defeat, but in acceptance. The wolves that once bowed to a crown now bowed to none, and the night knew that the war for the moon's will had just begun. The night didn't come. It descended. The moon hung low, vast and crimson, its light drowning the world in fever. Every stone in the palace seemed to vibrate under its weight. The wolves howled until their voices broke, their instincts twisted into something half worship, half terror. Leora felt it before she saw it. The mark at her collarbone throbbed like a heartbeat trying to break free of her chest. Her veins burned silver. Her reflection in the shattered mirror of the queen's chamber no longer looked human. It shimmered with threads of moonlight weaving beneath her skin. The king barred the doors of the throne hall, soldiers posted at every entrance. The blood moon pulled at him too. His claws tore through gloves, his fangs lengthened, but his eyes stayed locked on her. It's starting, he said, voice rough. The curse. Not a curse, she whispered. A calling. Don't romanticize it, Leora. The queen said the same before she died screaming. She met his gaze, the glow in her eyes bright enough to make him flinch. Maybe she didn't scream because she was dying. Maybe she screamed because the power was too much for one body. Before he could answer, the hall doors burst open. Cale stormed in with a dozen rebels at his back, their armor scorched, their eyes wild. Step away from her, he shouted, blade drawn. The blood moon's claim isn't yours to control. The king didn't move. You think you understand what's happening? You'll doom her by touching her now. Cale's jaw tightened. You already doomed her the night you chained her here. Leora's breath came shallow. The air shimmered around her like heat. Stop, she said, but her voice echoed, doubled, the second voice belonging to someone else. Older, hollow and endless. Every man in the room froze. The queen's voice, through her. The chandeliers flickered, flames bending toward Leora as if drawn by gravity. Her feet lifted an inch from the ground, hair weightless, light bleeding from her eyes. When she spoke again, it wasn't her voice anymore. The throne was never yours, King of Men. You were only the vessel's guardian. The king stumbled back, shaking his head. No, I buried you. The spirit smiled through Leora's lips. You buried a shell. I am the moon's echo, reborn in the blood you feared. Kale dropped to one knee. Your Majesty. Don't call her that, the king snapped. She's not your queen. The spirit turned her gaze on him, and the firelight dimmed. No, she's something far worse, the one who finishes what I could not. Leora's body jerked. Her own voice bled through the queen's, raw and human. What are you showing me? Visions flooded her mind. The queen standing on the same balcony, her skin glowing like liquid silver. The council chanting below, the moon splitting into two in the sky. Then, the blade, the betrayal, the silence. Her knees buckled. The queen's spirit steadied her from within. The curse is not vengeance, the echo whispered. It is succession. The moon does not choose lovers. It chooses rulers. If you survive this night, you will become what I was meant to be. Leora looked up, eyes wet with light. And if I don't? Then the throne dies with you. The king lunged forward, grabbing her arms, shaking her. Fight it! Do you hear me? Don't let her in! I can't stop her, she cried. She's already part of me. The queen's voice hissed through her teeth. He fears losing his crown more than losing you. The king's claws dug into the stone floor. I fear losing what little humanity I have left. The room trembled. Cracks snaked across the walls. Outside, the courtyard filled with wolves howling in sync with her heartbeat. Blood moonlight spilled through the stained windows, painting everything in red and silver. Kale moved closer, sword in one hand, the other stretched toward her. Leora, listen to me. You don't have to carry her will. You can make it your own. The queen laughed through her. He still believes in choice. Then why me? Leora shouted, fighting the pull inside her head. Why did the moon choose me? Because you are the bridge, the spirit whispered inside her mind. Because he is the bloodline, and the beta is the loyalty. Only through you can the two halves of power meet. The king backed away as the air thickened. He could feel her power crawling under his skin, invading his senses. You'll destroy everything, he warned. The moon doesn't give, it consumes. Leora looked at him through tears of light. Then maybe it's time someone consumed it back. She raised her hands and moonfire erupted from her palms, forming a circle of light that threw both men backward. The spirit's laughter echoed through the hall. The seals on the walls cracked, the old lunar sigils blazing to life for the first time in years. Kale dragged himself to his feet, shouting over the roar, "You'll burn yourself alive." "Then I'll burn the curse with me." But even as she said it, another voice answered, this one raw, human, and trembling. The king. Not alone. He stepped into the fire, ignoring Kale's shout, his body shaking as moonlight seared his skin. He reached for her face, his fingers trembling. If the moon demands a vessel, then it gets both of us. Leora's eyes widened. You'll die. So will you, he said. At least this way I die remembering I was more than a monster. The queen's spirit screamed inside her, a sound of rage and grief colliding. The fire surged, swallowing them both. When the light faded, Leora stood alone. Her skin still glowed faintly, but the mark had changed. No longer silver, but white as bone. The king lay collapsed at her feet, alive but unconscious, his chest marked with the same symbol. Kale approached slowly, sword lowered. Leora, what happened? She looked up at the moon through the shattered ceiling. The curse was never meant to end. It was meant to pass on. Her voice carried the queen's echo still, but also something new, something older than any kingdom. The moon had found its vessel, and its vessel had teeth. The palace reeked of smoke and blood. Rebellion had finally breached its heart. Leora stood barefoot in the corridor leading to the throne room. The floor beneath her feet cracked with veins of light. The energy humming under her skin had not dimmed since the blood moon. It moved through her like a living tide, calm one breath and violent the next. Every torch along the wall burned with silver fire instead of orange. Every sound was clearer than it should be. The clang of steel, the shouts of soldiers, the deep echo of a kingdom splitting down the middle. The doors burst open. Kale strode through first, armor blackened and dented, eyes burning with conviction and grief. Behind him came the rebels, the ones who'd chosen the crescent instead of the crown. The scent of battle followed them like a storm cloud. "Step aside, Leora," Kale said. "It ends tonight." She didn't move. "You'll burn everything trying to save it." The king's reign already burned it. His hand tightened around his sword. "You saw what the moon showed you. He's the reason the queen died. The reason you almost did. And killing him fixes that? It ends it." Before she could answer, the king appeared in the doorway behind her, barefoot, blood on his sleeve, eyes like molten gold. He'd abandoned his crown, his armor, his guards. Only the mark across his chest remained, glowing faintly under torn fabric. The same mark she bore, mirrored in his skin like a wound that refused to heal. "Kale," he said, voice low and hoarse, "you've forgotten yourself." "I remembered what loyalty costs," Kale replied. "I served a man who let a queen die. I won't serve another who thinks the moon owes him obedience." "Then draw your blade." Kale did. Leora stepped between them. "Enough." They didn't hear her. The moonlight through the shattered ceiling poured over the three of them like liquid metal, cold and absolute. The mark at her throat ignited in answer to the marks on their skin. The energy built too quickly. She felt it rise up her spine, push through her ribs, desperate for release. "Stop," she whispered. "I can't hold it." Too late. The light erupted. A shockwave tore through the throne hall. Glass exploded from the windows, banners caught fire, marble cracked like thin ice. Every soldier, every wolf, rebel and loyalist alike, fell to their knees under the force of it. Kale dropped his sword. The king's claws vanished as he staggered back, eyes wide. Leora stood at the center, the air around her trembling, hair floating as if caught in a current. The moon's energy coiled around her body, shaping itself into spectral ribbons that pulsed like living things. She turned toward them both, voice layered, hers, and another buried beneath, older and endless. "You're both fighting over power that was never yours." The king tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. The bond between them pulsed again, sharp, burning, demanding. She stepped toward him, her eyes luminous. "You didn't claim me," she said. "You awoke me." The silence that followed was heavier than sound. Even the flames seemed to listen. The king's lips parted, but no denial came. The truth was already bleeding between them, the mark on his chest dimming, hers flaring brighter. The balance of power had shifted, final and undeniable. He took one step closer, then another, until he stood within reach. For the first time since the night she'd met him, there was no command in his voice, only reverence. "You are the throne," he said. He sank to one knee, not in surrender, not in defeat, but in recognition. The wolves behind him followed instinctively, their heads bowing without order. Even Kale lowered his gaze, sword slipping from his grip. The throne itself cracked under the weight of moonlight, splintering into two halves. The stone behind it flared, revealing an old sigil that had slept beneath centuries of plaster, the mark of the moon's vessel. Leora's mark. She stared at the king, her voice soft but unyielding. "You ruled because the moon allowed it, not because it was yours to rule." He looked up at her, golden eyes reflecting the light she couldn't hide anymore. "Then take it. If the moon chose you, I won't fight it. You already have, she said, stepping closer. You fought it every time you tried to own what you were meant to protect. His throat worked. And what are you meant to do then? Save us? No. She reached out, her hand hovering above his bowed head. Remember us. The light from her palm touched his hair, and visions flooded through both of them. The Queen's death, the night of chains, the rebellion, the blood moon, all woven into one endless loop of repetition. The curse had never been vengeance. It had been memory demanding to be learned. When she withdrew her hand, he was shaking, tears streaking through soot on his face. It was always you, he whispered. Leora turned away from him, facing the rebels and the loyalists alike. This palace will not serve kings or betas anymore. It will serve balance. What does that mean? Kale asked. It means we start over, with no throne, no master, no chains. She glanced at the king, still kneeling, still silent. Not even me. The moonlight began to fade, the color draining from the air, until only gray remained. The hall was quiet except for the sound of breathing, the kind that comes after a storm when everything broken is still counting what survived. She looked down at the king, the man who had once called her his curse. He met her eyes and said, "Then what am I now?" Her answer was almost a whisper. The first to kneel, the last to forget. The moon slipped behind a cloud, and for the first time in years, the palace knew peace, not because it was won, but because it was waiting for what would come next. Dawn came pale and soundless, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. The war had ended in whispers, not victory cries. Smoke rose from the ruined courtyards, curling into the morning like ghosts reluctant to leave. The wolves no longer howled. Their voices had given out hours ago. The palace that once echoed with chains and commands now stood still. The great banners of the royal line, red and gold, hung tattered, their symbols half burned. The marble floors were cracked, streaked with ash and moonlight. Leora walked barefoot through the debris, her gown torn, her hair loose, the silver glow in her eyes dim but unbroken. The air bent around her, softly, reverently. The moon's energy had retreated from the sky, but it still lingered in her pulse, quiet and waiting. The throne room lay open to the dawn. Half its roof was gone, the ceiling ripped apart where the moon had struck during the final clash. The throne itself lay in ruins, split clean down the middle, its jewels scattered like fallen stars. And at the center of it all, the king lay slumped against a pillar, blood staining his ribs, breath shallow. His crown was gone. His eyes, still faintly gold, lifted when she entered. "You lived," he rasped. "So did you," she answered. He gave a tired smile. "Barely. The moon favored you this time." "The moon doesn't favor," she said, kneeling beside him. "It remembers." He turned his head, the light catching his face hollowed and human again. "Is it over?" "Yes," she said softly. "And no." He looked around at the ruins. "You destroyed the throne." "I rewrote it," she corrected. "It won't seat a single ruler anymore. It will stand as a circle. The wolves will lead together, bound by the same light that cursed us." He blinked, half in disbelief. "You're remaking the kingdom." "I'm remaking the choice," she said. "No bloodline, no chains. The moon will not pick kings again." A silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant drip of water from the ceiling. "Kale?" he asked finally. Her throat tightened. She looked toward the far end of the hall where a crescent-shaped mark had been burned into the stone floor. "Gone," she whispered. "He took the rebels beyond the borders before dawn. Said someone had to keep the old world from following us." The king nodded slowly, eyes heavy with both relief and regret. "He was always meant to survive me." "He wasn't meant to serve anyone," she said. "Not even me." He laughed weakly. "Then maybe you were right. Maybe it's time none of us bow anymore." Leora reached out, brushing a streak of blood from his face. Rest. The moon's pull is gone. He caught her wrist gently. No, it's not. His gaze searched hers. It's just changed hands. Her breath hitched. The mark at her collarbone pulsed once, faintly, as if agreeing. I didn't ask for this, she said. Neither did I, he murmured. But the moon never asks. He leaned back, closing his eyes. Do you hate me? She looked at him for a long time. I used to. And now? Now, she said quietly. I understand you. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. That's worse. Then his hand fell still. Leora didn't cry. She laid her palm on his chest until his heartbeat faded into the silence of the ruined hall. The mark on his skin dimmed completely, the thread between them dissolving into dust. The first rays of sunlight touched the floor, cutting through smoke and shadow. They turned her tears into silver lines against her cheeks. She stood slowly, facing the open ceiling where the sky glowed white. All around her, the wolves, those who survived, emerged from the corridors and knelt. Not out of obedience, but reverence. They didn't call her queen. They didn't need to. The moonlight that spilled over her shoulders was crown enough. Leora lifted her face toward the pale sky. The mark on her skin shimmered once, then faded, leaving behind only a faint scar. The curse had broken, but its memory stayed. In her eyes, the silver light remained, steady and eternal. The seer's voice carried faintly through the courtyard, echoing like an old prophecy finding its final breath. When the moon remembers her name, the night learns peace. Leora turned to the circle of wolves and spoke, her voice calm, clear, and ancient all at once. No more kings, no more chosen. We lead together, or we fall together. The crowd bowed their heads, the sound of unity replacing the silence of fear. She stepped down from the broken dais and walked into the dawn. Her bare feet left faint silver prints on the cracked marble, fading slowly behind her. And as the light swallowed the ruins, the moon lingered in the pale sky, faint but watching, its reflection flickering briefly in her eyes. The story wasn't over. It never would be, because the moon remembers what mortals forget, and it had finally remembered her name.